things here. Our discussion here is called Trust, Performance and Ethics in Action. And we're really going to explore how ethics can be good for business. And what's I think, very interesting about having Ty and Seni here is that Ty's spends a lot of time doing research and educating people about B2B marketing, and Seni in her role at the A&A is really focused on consumer brands and consumer marketing. So as more that we've discussed ethics in business, it's been clear that actually the rules for business to business, where there's a contract in place, have a certain kind of rules, and we can explore those kind of things and good behaviors. And then for consumers, it's very different because there's not that contract in place, but yet we want to build trust in our consumer brands. So, Ty, you started off in Google and IBM,
yes.
Is that right? Tell us a bit about the journey just to get to where you are now as a B2B marketing expert.
Yes, well, I'm in this space because I'm passionate about the power of language to create a vision that's possible for people to buy into and make real. I'm also passionate about people connecting solutions to problems, which is part of the reason I also work for LinkedIn, where we are focused on the vision of economic opportunity for global professionals and also connecting people to make them more productive and successful. So through my career in B2B, I know how many people actually work in B2B? I'm curious in this room. Oh, so a few people. It's like, how did you even end up in that space? Part of the reason why I fell in love with B2B is because there's a long-term relationship involved. There is an aspect of investment and connection over time. And so as we think about this ethics conversation, that has to be part of that conversation and story. So that's why I'm in the space.
Very good. And Seni, apart from having stolen my shirt, so thank you.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
I'll have that later.
We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you started as in law in DC, right?
Yes.
In comms and ethics and law.
Yeah, absolutely.
Legal.
Yeah. So my background, I was fascinated with communications, with the First Amendment. Went to law school, communications lawyer by training. And then I ended up working at the National Newspaper Association. So I go way back. I started at the Direct Marketing Association back in 2002. The Direct Marketing Association was then acquired by the A&A in 2018. So I've been doing ethics since roughly 2006, meaning we had a very large program at the Direct Marketing Association dealing with consumers and consumer complaints. And we brought that into the A&A to focus in on what's happening with brands and with consumers. But a lot of the issues are the same despite the technology and the revolution that we're seeing now with AI. So it's really fascinating. I also teach at Georgetown University.
Oh, I went to Georgetown.
Oh
my gosh, that's great.
at the graduate school, so I totally understand the need to teach ethics. It's very challenging. We have a graduate student program, and I do 15 classes, and that only scratches the surface at the grad student level of what we need to think about.
Very good. Okay, well, let's get into it. My name's Tom Denford. I didn't introduce myself. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called ID Comms. We're a consultancy that works with brands to help them be better at media, and ethics is a key part of that. Ty, I'm going to start with you, and we'll start with the basics, because you spend a lot of time on thinking about how businesses talk to each other and relate to each other in the B2B world. And what does ethics mean in business? Let's just start there. What does it mean?
I think it's so good to start with a definition of it across. And I love an analogy or metaphor to paint the picture. So I think about it like how you might think about architectural integrity. So if you're putting up a building, beams, structures, foundational support, you could cut corners. That could be one way to get the job done. You could have beams that are weak with cracks. You could essentially stand up a building that's not structurally sound. And so I think that when we think about conversation of ethics, if you're cutting corners, if you're setting up beams that are not going to maintain the institution, you're introducing rot. And I think when you think about the integrity of it, whether it's the institution or the person or the people behind that building and the story, it's just a matter of time You know, I think it could be a short-term thing or a long-term thing, but it is only a matter of time before you're going to have to deal with the fact that it's not a sound structure. You're not standing on a strong foundation. So I think about ethics as the foundational investment in the integrity of yourself and in the institution you're building.
So, and every business should
Every
have
bit.
ethics.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we'll come on to think about how, then if you don't have them, like what is it that's missing if you don't have ethics? But in the consumer space, how important is ethics really to consumers and their perception of brands and businesses?
Oh, it's incredibly important. So we talk to consumers, thousands of consumers in a year's time. You can imagine that consumers don't love advertising unless it's the advertising properly targeted to them at the right time. I come from a world where there was a lot of mass marketing and a lot of consumer complaints. Consumers are realizing that perhaps there is no privacy, especially in the digital realm, but they're very skeptical, and they do want brands to demonstrate what their ethics mean, what are their practices, what are their principles. They really want the transparency and they want the accountability. So we work a lot on accountability. Most of the issues that we run into are, you know, anyone in this room would just practically laugh at some of the bad advertising that we've seen. Not legitimate organizations for certain, but it taints the entire advertising and brand community because that's what the consumer sees.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's the issue that we're facing today. That's why we've got to build the ethics and the framework, as you're saying.
Okay. So ethics are important both in the consumer landscape and B2B. Tie back to you. So, how do ethics help accelerate or facilitate good business then? So I might have ethics as a company. Why is that good for my business?
Yeah. For B2B in particular, I think there are two things. So when I talked about the relationship-based aspect of it, that is one of the most important things. I think first, when people are entering into a relationship, they're not just making a decision like buying a can of Coca-Cola or buying a t-shirt. They're buying $1 million analytics platform. They're literally betting their career on that business decision. Now there's a buying committee involved, but yet there's still an incredible amount of pressure inside of that decision. So as they're making that decision, there is value in understanding that the person or people or this institution that you're doing business with can be trusted, that they are going to do what they say they're going to do, that they're going to be able to follow through for you in that because of the risk being taken. There's value in the reputation of the company that you choose to do business with. So it makes it easier to negotiate. There's like a smoothness to it that you don't get when you're not clear. I think the other thing about it is just the fact that buying decisions are made primarily not as rationally as we would think in B2B. But there's a lot of, as I said, a lot of emotion behind the decision, and much of it is based on memory. So at the B2B Institute, we say the brand that's remembered is the brand that's bought. A lot of these decisions are made by people searching in their memory. The first search engine they search is the one in their mind when they're looking for a solution. Who do I know, or what business do I know that can solve this problem? Adjacent to the memory structures that they recall is their sense of that business or person. Are they reliable? Can I trust them to be there and to back up that solution? So ethics and that reputation is also surrounding that business decision that's being made. So that's actually a make or break moment, that sense that person has of the business that they're going to ultimately choose or not choose.
And it can get you down to business quicker, I guess, because people are quicker enabled to kind of sit around a table.
The deal moves faster.
Yeah.
There's pricing power. When you're because there's value in that reputational choice, lower acquisition costs. So for a number of different angles, it smooths the process of doing business.
Very good. Sunny, tell me about how we measure ethics. Is there a way, if I own a business, we're in a business B2B space, so how do I know if I'm ethical or not? How do we measure that?
Maybe the shortest, easiest way is whether or not you get a second purchase or a second donation or a second ask from that consumer. If it's that whole adage of fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. Where a consumer is willing to perhaps purchase something and have a great experience, ethics at every touch point. But there's so many instances where the consumer purchases something or gets something and there's a problem with it, and maybe the company, the brand, has a terrible consumer front line. You have to go through multiple steps to try to get a refund. You have a lot of perhaps issues with the product's quality. So you want to make sure that at every touch point, you've got someone looking at the ethics, someone looking at the quality, someone looking at the consumer experience. So I also work with a lot of charities, and they're always looking at the donor relationship that they want for the entire lifetime. Brands also want that lifetime value.
Yeah.
But if you have that mistake or that lapse the first time, they're not going to come back. They're going to look at competitors, they're going to look at others.
Yeah. Ty, is there anything in the B2B space? How do you advise businesses to? Can you track ethics? I mean, what do you know? How do you know? Or is it just about? It's just a business metric. Is that really the thing? It's like the success just comes from it, and we have to just believe that you do the right thing, you build businesses faster, and you're more successful.
I think it's the same question that you would ask around, like, can you measure the value of a brand? Because the science of brand wrapped in the decision making, it is a risk variance conversation that people aren't necessarily connected to, and like, how do you measure the value of fame is like a relevant question to ask in this situation. So just think about the businesses or people that you know that are famous, that are known for something. Part of what you know and the sense you have of them is that who they are today will be who they are a year from now, and that is worth something. So similarly, like when you think about reputation and ethics and being someone that is known to be someone who can deliver, someone who stands for a particular value and that is consistent in delivery of that, there's huge value for that in businesses. And so to say, like, how do we measure that? That's a question of like measuring the surround of a brand and how the brand is out front reputationally opening doors for you.
Yeah. And I'm sure there was no easy answer to
There's
that.
not. I mean, we've spent quite a bit of time measuring this, but there's there's an intangible nature to it.
Yeah.
But what we know to be true, we have a piece of research called the CMO scorecard, and part of it is to make sure that people are present to how brand opens doors. So part of the way to look at it is it's not just the brand in its like sense of Big B brand. It's like the door opening that happens, the pipelines that are expanded, the fact that people pick up the phone for your sale is a sales pipeline. The fact that you can attract better talent, all of that is in the surrounding of it. So if you believe those engines to be true, then you can value like what is the greater surround of the business outside of marketing that brand brings to life. That's how you would start to quantify the value.
Good. Okay, so we've established that ethics are foundational, both in business and in consumer relationships, that they're built over time, that there's no shortcut to do those things. So let's think practically then about how do we, as businesses, how do we communicate ethics and build trust? Because really we're saying ethics is a gateway to trusting relationships. What advice do you give to businesses and Cindy, what advice do you give to brands about good ways to build trust? What are the right things to do to reinforce and build trust with your customers?
Yeah, so I think a couple things. So one, give value before you're extracting value. So, we in B2B love to gate things behind a wall. I think it's worth thinking about, like, how are you giving more? And we do thought leadership. Our job isn't to look smart ourselves. It's to make the community of people we're serving smarter. So pour more into the category. I like the phrase rising tides like lift all boats. You're increasing the health of the category by pouring value in. So pouring more value than you extract. I think number 2 is tell the truth, even when it's inconvenient. So at the B2B Institute, we have an annual report called B2B Trends for the Contrarian Marketer. It's a little spicy only because these are like unconventional practices that deliver a lot of value that for some reason the industry is swimming against. Like the long time story of underinvestment in brand and the focus on demand. The fact that emotion is something that we should be thinking about from a behavioral science perspective. These are things that, for whatever reason, marketers have pushed back against over time, but we are invested in the truth of these concepts based on our research. And so these might be inconvenient, but we want to talk about them. And then I think the last thing is like show up. You know, we gotta prove it. We gotta be there time after time. And part of how you show up is just be consistent in the way you deliver. Worry less about trust in the sense of the broad word, and be someone who's trustworthy, right? So I think those 3 things would be some principles that if we could invest in that as an industry would be incredibly helpful.
Can we just make a big plug here for the B2B Institute?
Oh.
Not that she didn't ask me to do this, but you've got you have amazing resources. Where would people find those things?
Yes, you can find us at b2binstitute.org. We're also on LinkedIn, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Wouldn't it be something if all of us left the room connected as well? That'd be incredible. Oh yes, here we go. Yes. Awesome. Nice one. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So we've got quite a few things, as you can imagine, but I'm just going to highlight a couple.
Yeah.
So I would say 3 big themes. One would be transparency. The next would be accountability. And then the third would be internal culture. So with regards to being transparent, that would be things like your notices, your footers on your web pages and your apps. Your privacy policies don't have to be, 15,000 pages. Just think of how you're facing that consumer and what are you promising to that experience, that consumer. In terms of accountability, we have a lot going on across the industry. There are a lot of coalitions. I'm from the Washington area, and we have a lot happening both at the state and federal level where we have to put our best foot forward because the regulators, the legislators are looking at what are marketers doing. We might be saying a lot about trust and being ethical, but what are we actually doing? So we do have some coalition work that we've got the Digital Advertising Alliance, which makes sure that we have some accountability for digital marketing, especially behavioral advertising. We also have old school legacy DMA choice. So if you're in direct mail, if you're doing email, if you're doing telemarketing, we have accountability there. And then thirdly, the internal corporate culture. A lot of this flows from the top in terms of being ethical. So whenever we see perhaps some crisis management happening because someone stepped on it, it's usually because the corporate culture simply is not there. So there's many instances. I don't know if anyone is here from Wells Fargo. I really apologize, but this happened years ago where unfortunately Wells Fargo got caught because they had set up a lot of fake consumer accounts, right? And they had to pay millions and millions of dollars in order to rectify that. And the reason for setting up these accounts was to meet sales quotas. So is that ethical? Is that the right thing to do in this type of setting where you're dealing with bank customers, you're dealing with financial information? So there's a lot that can be done, certainly through certification, through your programs. Certainly we have many, many toolkits. But as you said, you have to be present, you have to be there, you have to kind of like lean in, be very proactive. Yep. Otherwise, you're going to be in a passive situation where you get caught and then you've got to do that awful crisis management.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, so ethics are important. They take time to build, and then you've got some resources that can help us do that, both from a brand, business, and a consumer perspective. So that's good, that's reassuring, isn't it? The big kind of scary looming thing there in this is AI, and I think everyone's going to talk about this because it's just having such a cut across impact, isn't it, to all of these great principles, and maybe giving us lots of excuses to drop our ethics or be lazy or be sloppy, all these kind of things. John's in the room somewhere who wrote, I was talking to John this morning, who wrote 2016, a different John. There are 2 Johns in New York, and 2 Johns in New York, and they're both here. you wrote a book about AI and ethics, and you're speaking later, so I'm not, you don't need to
Ooh,
talk about it, but he was telling me this morning, and that was in 2016, that you started kind of anticipating there may be ethical issues in AI, so thank you to you. We're now, 9 years later, these things maybe are becoming very, very real right now. So let's just talk about that. So if AI, maybe there's a risk that AI is eroding trust, how are you advising businesses to use AI? Is it possible to use it in an ethical way that enhances trust and reputation?
Yeah. So I like to think about two things, and I'd be curious, John, to hear your thoughts on how you might expand that. But the two things I like to think about is, so one, to remember that AI is a tool. It's a very sophisticated tool, but similar to like the introduction of the calculator or any other mobile phone, the way it is today, it is a tool. So part of the thinking around that is it's who's behind the tool and what are their practices. There's a book written by Mo Gadot where he talks about like AI being like Superman, right? So Superman comes from Krypton, crashes on Earth, ends up with a really nice family who teach him to make good choices, ethical choices, so Metropolis is saved. But let's say he ended up in a bad situation that could have been very different. So I think part of it is like making sure that the operators of the AI are schooled in the practices and thinking and with the integrity. And then I think the other part of it is like, well, what is the data, the source of the content that it's being trained on? Because that's the other thing. It's garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as what's being fed to it. And I think, part of what I keep hearing these days is people talking about AI slop. Has anyone heard that?
Yeah.
I feel like so there's this content proliferation that's happening right now. And it's very easy, it's very tempting to kind of think about doing that because it's simple to do now. But there's a responsibility that we have as marketers and as leaders to make sure that we're not just expanding content at scale without thinking about what is the quality of the content that we're pouring into the system, and to focus on, what I would rather see 5 really great pieces that are grounded in truth than like 5,000 pieces of stuff that's distracting and hurts the system.
And I know you're not here representing LinkedIn, and she made me promise, like, don't ask me any questions about LinkedIn, because you don't represent LinkedIn in that sense. But that is an algorithmic business. If we just kind of look at those kind of things, how do you reconcile the idea that we've all developed this instinct, part of it taught from B2B marketing, which is, as you said, like show up, be present, always be there, and we're competing in the noise, right? We're competing for share of voice and for cut through, and so it probably is tempting.
It's so tempting
for people just to think, oh, just click, I can multiply the amount of stuff I put out there.
But people see it though.
Yeah.
Just yesterday, I saw.
So just being there with volume is not enough.
No, but people are not dumb. Just yesterday, I've seen posts. You all have seen these posts. I saw a post from someone that said, "Hey, y'all need to stop using AI to generate your comments. Like we can see it. We can see that you're doing that." Yeah. Or how many posts have you seen where people are like, "That's AI."
Yeah.
That's the world we're living in now. But we should assume that people are going to become more adept at seeing what is actually really real and really thought through and high quality, and treat people like humans.
Yeah. But sorry, just one little follow-up on that, because on B2B marketing, you can tell I'm interested in B2B marketing. On B2B marketing, a lot of it's historically been to kind of business to business, hasn't it? Kind of corporate accounts, where probably the temptation of somebody in corporate communications is to just go like set a model and blur stuff out that's all kind of very vanilla. But are you seeing more individuals being at the forefront of B2B marketing? Like the people, right? People communicating to
Yeah.
people rather than companies communicating to companies.
Yeah, I am. And I mean, one of the ways we see this is just in the rise of the B2B creator economy. Part of the beauty of the AI tools is that it is empowering more people to actually run their own businesses and have their own presence. And, I think, in B2B marketing, we know that effectiveness comes from distinctiveness. It's from having a voice. It's from not being like everything else. Like standing out is one of the best ways to deliver value with on a very small budget, right? So the investment in the B2B creator economy and the growth of it, I think, is part of what we're seeing as a result of that. But that's something that businesses need to understand too. We shouldn't just be copying everything. We need to be thinking about how do we refine our own voice, and how can we be not mistaken for another brand because we're clear.
Yeah, love it.
I hope that helps. Yeah.
Cindy, from a consumer perspective then, we're all very cynical, aren't we, of, as you said, businesses until we start to interact with them. There's not that contract up front. When we as a consumer approaching a brand, we withhold our cynicism maybe temporarily and just see.
Yeah.
How does AI play into that space? Is it making it harder for
I think
brands
it's
to build that credibility?
It's much harder, I think. Well, we, of course, at A&E, we love AI. I mean, it's kind of like the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation where we love AI until something goes wrong, and then it can really become a monster. It's just so incredible. As we're speaking today, there's probably even more leaps ahead with AI. But the consumer is incredibly skeptical already of brands that are run by humans. Just imagine brands being run by AI or communicating through AI. They're going to be even more skeptical and less willing to engage. So there's a couple of issues going on right now in the trust area.
Yeah.
Of course, with influencer marketing, just imagine if that's powered by AI and AI influencers. Is that really genuine? Is that really ethical to have an AI influencer who's never tested the product, but they're saying that they have, and they're really fun and cute? There are the chatbots, right? And you saw a lot of terrible, tragic headlines around chatbots, teens, and younger children. So a lot of this will be regulated if it hasn't already been. And AI is not exempt from the law. It's not exempt from ethics, from current ethical standards. We did build in ethics into AI ethics into our current code, but it still has a way to go. We're trying to be very organic with this as we're chasing after how do we build trust in AI, because we're going to be missing out on humanity, the human aspects. I know a lot of our members, when we were talking and thinking about this, they're really worried that we're going to lose our humanity. It's going to be agentic AI talking to agentic AI. And what does that really mean for our society? So not to get too high level, but these are things that we as marketers, we're right on the front lines with social considerations that we have to think about as we're deploying these great systems.
Okay, very good. So success in this space, clearly, if foundational AI principles are going to super help brands. I'm going to open up in a second to some questions. I'll take a couple of questions, so have a think about what you might want to ask Ty and Seni. Just as a wrap up, you're both involved in, from different perspectives, in the kind of research and teaching us really about ethics and trust in business. For young people coming into this industry, who I think somebody referenced already this morning, Anna, was that you? Said people, we're young people are kind of cynical about the advertising business, and they may be skeptical about our ethics as an industry. And I certainly see that interviewing graduates. We have a fairly low and poor reputation, unfortunately, when it comes to ethical standards. What would your advice be to young people coming into marketing or advertising as it relates to the trust that we can build in this business?
Yeah. Ooh, have a North Star.
Yeah.
I think, the meaning we give the work is for all of us to decide. But I think to be intentional and to have a higher purpose other than just selling, nothing's wrong with that. I'm just saying that if you can, make a commitment to have integrity in all things, but also to have like a higher purpose. I think that helps keep you grounded in the journey.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. I would echo that, and I think that young people really can move the needle on ethics in different ways than we certainly can't. They are at the front lines of a renaissance right now in marketing and advertising. They should be studying philosophy, religion,
Oh, yes.
other areas besides just marketing and advertising, and to really get a sense of their own internal moral compass. That's what I tell the students when they first start the class. Everyone here has a moral compass, but it's going to be different. Everyone here has a background that they come from, and they can bring that to the table. The student should feel also empowered as a leader. You shouldn't feel like if you're starting at an entry-level position, which all of them want to start in digital for some reason. They all want to start in digital. They want to be these amazing digital influencers. But you are an influencer at the start when you hit that desk and you start working on marketing advertising, because you're outreaching to the public.
Yeah.
And you're presenting brands, and you're presenting a lot of ideas, a lot of notions. And you're saying that those notions are credible. And when they're not, what are you going to do? And you have to figure that out. Do you have a moral compass? And what is it? And that's why you have to study religion, philosophy, ethics, in addition to marketing.
Good.
Love
Very
that.
Good advice. Good advice. I'll open up for some questions.
The question is completely non-AI based. So with regard to brands and their reputation and their sort of ethical foundation, we have previously, up until the very beginning of this year, had brands be very loud and proud around social issues. What impact, long-term and or short-term, do you feel like the increase in silence on issues and or the expunging of language that was previously there is going to have on those brands in the long term? So, and that covers everything from expunging DEI language to withdrawing funding for pride sponsorships, like all of those things that previously brands said, this is who we are, this is what we believe. There's a massive trend toward, or do we?
Yeah.
How is that going to impact them?
Yeah, I think the people can see the dissonance, right? People can see and feel the dissonance, and that is a trust eroding decision that's being made. It's in some sense you could say it's like a breach of contract. In one sense, like this is what brands leaders articulated that they stood for, and then the next day or it's gone. I think what I see now and the opportunity for today is we can see the brands that made those decisions, and what's remaining is really the truth of the matter. And I think power comes and agency comes from operating in truth. And I think also the reality is that there are a lot of people who do believe in the principles that were articulated, but what we want to do is work with the people and have more leaders that stand for those principles. I still believe that communities have expectations of leaders and brands to make the communities in which they operate better places and to be responsible stewards of that. So to your point, I think we need to cultivate the next generation of leaders, and we need to deal with and address what's happening now, but we need to deal with it from a truth standpoint.
Yeah, and just to add, it's really difficult. There's brand purpose, of course, to figure out what is that brand's purpose in the marketplace, and how do you articulate that and draw in your right audiences. And it's something that I think all the brands are wrestling with these days, to be truthful. And not just represent and not do anything, but actually be truthful. So again, I work with a lot of charities and nonprofit organizations who are conducting incredible missions, and they can demonstrate that. But then you've got brands who are maybe not in those spaces, and how do they demonstrate that? You have to ask those questions.
Yeah. We've got time for one more quick one. Yeah.
It's interesting.
Sorry, hang on 1 second. Wait for the mic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's even more interesting now. We're talking about our next level, our next leaders coming up. Is there a way that IAE can cooperate with ANA to help manage the ethics of these, emerging leaders into this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to chat with Andrew, and I have talked in the past, and definitely there's so many colleges, universities that need training. You know, I just know from my own experience as a professor, as an adjunct, that when the student comes in, they really don't know anything, and they're at the grad level. It's incredible how much we can show them. It's very exciting.
Yeah, let's get resources together. Let's make that happen. John, the other John, has a question. Yeah.
I want to go back to Rachel's question. Hi, I'm John Osborne. I represent AdNet Zero, which is dealing with things in the sustainability space. And you know, one of the things that I think it's incumbent on, I mean, one of the reasons I'm here, and I think that one of the big opportunities for a room like this is the conversation changes if I was to frame it as better ethics means better business, you know? And I think that's something that's undeniable. That's what we're in service of, representing whoever we represent, the clients we represent, the firms we represent. We're in it to drive better business. And so when I talk about sustainability, the word sustainability has been redefined in today's world, but it's undeniable that more sustainable business results is something that everybody is striving for. So we don't have all the case studies yet, we don't have all the proof points yet, but I do think there's possibly an unlock in some of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's well articulated. I think we need to make that connection clear. We need to turn the signal up on that. And I understand, like, there's conversation that's meant to dampen, distract, and it makes it tough for us. There's pressures that don't allow us to focus on that, but this is the room that can help turn the signal up on that message. Every ethical transaction is an investment, and every unethical thing is a withdrawal with interest on that. And I think that once people understand that connection, let's turn the signal up on that.